Hi, this is Mrs. Ward, and I am going to go over the classwork for 9.1a, which is standard equations of circles. So the number 2, the center is at the origin, and the radius is 4 times the square root of 2. So to remind you real quick, the standard form of an equation is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, where hk is the center, the coordinates of the center, and r would be your radius. So when I look at this, the center is at the origin, which means my hk would be 0, 0. My radius is 4 times the square root of 2. So putting that into this equation, I'm going to write x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared is equal to 4 times the square root of 2, and I'm going to take care to put that in parentheses, squared. I'm going to clean this up by writing x squared plus y squared is equal to, and when I take 4 times the square root of 2 in my calculator, I end up getting 32. If you put this in parentheses, you'll get 32. If you forget to put it in parentheses, you're going to get 8, which would be wrong, so put it in parentheses. All right, the next one. I'm going to have my center is -3, -1, so my h is -3, my k is -1, and my diameter is 2 times the square root of 7. So to find my radius, I'm going to cut this in half. So my radius will just be the square root of 7. Remember, you can't divide what's underneath the radical sign. You can just divide the coefficient. So when I write this, I am going to have x minus a -3 squared plus y minus a -1 squared is equal to the square root of 7, that whole thing squared. Oh, that's a 7, that's a 2. So this will be x plus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to 7. Moving on to the next one. It tells me to identify the center and the radius of the circle, and it's given to me in standard form, which makes life very easy. So what else I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is my h, and this is my k, and this is my r squared. So when I find my center is going to be it's kind of like you take the opposite of what you see. So my h is going to be -2. My k is going to be 7, because remember, it's whatever you're subtracting from the x, whatever you're subtracting from the y. And then my radius is going to be the square root of 16, which would just simply be 4. The next one, it wants me to write the equation of the circle in standard form and then identify the center and the radius. So when I look at this one, I am going to have to first put it in that standard form. So I like to write my x's together, write my y's together, and then put anything that doesn't have an x or y over to the other side. So I'm going to write x squared minus 2x, that's putting my x's together, plus y squared plus 6y is equal to, subtracting 9 from both sides, I get -9. Then I'm going to complete the square. So I'm going to take the square root of x, which is x. Whatever sign this is, I'm going to copy down here. Then, if you remember from the video, you divide your middle term by 2. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to divide it by 2. And that's going to end up being 1. And then 1 squared will be 1. So I'm going to add 1 to here. If I add 1 to the left side, that means I have to add 1 to the right side. Doing the same thing for the next one. I'm going to have plus the square root of y is y squared is y. This is a plus sign, so I'm going to copy down a plus sign. Take 6 and divide it by 2, and I get 3. 3 squared is going to be 9, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. When I add 9 to both sides, when I add all this side, I'm going to get 1. And so that is the standard form of my equation. The next one, I have on this one, since I know it's a circle, and they tell me it's a circle, but if I didn't know it was a circle, I could tell it was a circle by looking at the equation, because In order for it to be a circle, the coefficients of the x squared and the y squared have to be the same, and these are exactly the same. They're both 9. So what I'm going to do to make life easy on myself is I'm going to divide everything by 9. Every single term I'm going to divide by 9. I can even divide the 0 by 9 if I want. It doesn't really matter. So here I'm going to have x squared plus y squared plus 6x minus 4y plus 17 over 9 is equal to 0. Now I'm doing the same thing that I did over here. I'm going to put my x's together, put my y's together, and put that 17/9 over to the other side by subtracting it from both sides. Going to complete the square like I did on the other one. I'm going to take the x first. I'm going to do x. This is a plus sign, so I'm going to write a plus sign. Take this 6 and divide it by 2, and I get 3. 3 squared is 9, so I'm going to add 9 to this side, which means I'm going to add 9 to this side. Then for the y's, I'm going to divide the 4 by 2. This is a minus sign, so I'm going to copy that down. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4, so I'm going to add 4 to this side, and I'm going to add 4 to this side. So now when I add the left side, I get and when I add that, I get 100 over 9. Oh, and I never did finish this one over here. It asked me to identify the center and the radius. So the center for this one is going to be the ordered pair 1, -3. The radius is going to be the square root of 1, which will just simply be 1. Then over here, the center, see, it slid down on me. The center will be -3, +2, and the radius, it looks like a kindergarten's writing this, is going to be the square root of 100 over 9, which I can simplify as the square root of 100 over the square root of 9, which will simply be 10, that's a 0, 10 thirds. So that's how I do those two. Moving on. It says sketch the circle, identify the center and the radius. So this one I'm just going to move this y squared over to the other side. So I'm going to have x squared plus y squared is equal to 16. My center is going to be the ordered pair 0, 0. So my center is going to be at the origin. So I'm going to plot that center right there. My radius is going to be the square root of 16, which will just simply be 4. So to sketch this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at my center, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the left, 4 places to the right, 4 places up, and 4 places down. And those will give me the points on the outside of my circle, and I'm going to sketch my circle. Moving on to the next one. I don't have it in standard form, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in standard form, and then I'm going to identify the center. So I have x squared minus 6x plus y squared plus 6y, and I'm going to put that 14 over the other side and make it equal to -14. I am going to take half of the 6, so I have to divide that by 2, and when I do that, I'm going to have x, copying down that minus sign, 3 squared. When I take 3 squared, I get 9. So this is equal to this. So I'm going to have to add 9 here, which means I'm going to have to add 9 to the right side. Doing the same thing for the y variable, I'm going to have plus y. This is a plus sign, so I'm going to copy down the plus sign, divide this 6 by 2, and I get 3. 3 squared is 9. And you'll notice that even though this one has a minus sign and this one has a plus sign, I'm still adding 9. And you will always add. You will never subtract. You will always add. because when I take this and I square it, it's always going to be a positive number. So now when I take negative 14 plus 9 plus 9, I'm going to get a positive 4. My center is going to be a positive 3, negative 3. So that means I'm going to go the right 3, down 3. I'm going to plot my center right there. That's 3, negative 3. My radius is going to be the square root of 4, which is going to be 2. So to draw this circle, I'm going to go 2 to the right, 2 up, 2 left, and then 2 down. And that's going to be my circle. Here's another one. Here I'm going to have x squared plus 2x plus y squared. Notice I don't have a y to the first power, and that's okay. I'm just going to leave the y squared on this side. I'm still going to move the 35 over to the other side. Completing the square for x, I'm going to have x, copying down this plus sign. 2 divided by 2 is just simply going to be 1. 1 squared is going to be 1, so I'm going to add 1 to this side, which means I add 1 to this side. The y squared, I don't have to complete the square because it's just y, so I'm going to write y squared is equal to 36. My center then is going to be the order pair negative 1, 0, so I'm going to plot that negative 1, 0. There's my center, and my radius will be the square root of 36, which is 6. To draw that circle, I'm going to go 6 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Plot that point, 6 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 6 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to sketch that circle. Not a very good circle. You should hit all those points. Okay, doing the next one. Okay, the last type of problems are finding the x and the y-intercepts. So you're finding the places on the graph where it crosses the x-axis and the y-axis. So the best way to do that is to set one of your variables equal to 0. So if I am finding the x-intercept, I actually set the y variable equal to 0. Now, it's kind of set up nicely for me to do this in the first one. It's in standard form. So I'm just going to substitute 0 in for y. I'm going to leave this as x minus 2 squared plus 0 plus 3 squared is equal to 9. And I'm not going to FOIL this first one out. I'm going to leave that one the way it is. You learned how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. And so the square was already completed, so I'm going to leave it like that, and it should make my life easier. I'm going to take 0 plus 3, which is 3. 3 squared is 9, so this will be plus 9 is equal to 9. Subtract 9 from both sides, and I'm going to have x minus 2 is equal to 0. And this is squared. Take the square root of the left side, take the square root of the right side. When I take the square root of this binomial squared, it just erases the square roots. It just takes care of this being squared and makes it x minus 2. And then the square root of 0 is 0. Technically, you should think of it as plus or minus 0, but 0 is just 0. So then I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I'm going to get x is equal to 2. So my y-intercept is going to be the ordered pair 2, because that's what I just found for x. And then remember, originally I put in 0 for y. So that's my x-intercept when I set y equal to 0. Now I'm going to find my y-intercept. And in order to do that, I'm going to set x equal to 0. So here we go. I'm going to put 0 minus 2, that quantity squared, plus y plus 3 squared is equal to 9. This will just end up being negative 2 squared. So this will be 4 plus the quantity of y plus 3, oops, dropped my square sign, squared is equal to 9. Subtract 4 from both sides, and I'm going to have y plus 3 is equal to 5. Take the square root of this side, take the square root of this side, and I'm going to have y plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. Subtract 3 from both sides. I'm going to have y is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5. So my answers are going to be x was equal to 0, because that's what I set here. And I'm going to have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5. So I actually have two y-intercepts. One is at 0 and negative 3 plus the square root of 5. And then I have another y-intercept at 0 and then negative 3 minus the square root of 5. And you can leave it like this, where you have the plus or minus there, or you can write the two separate ones. That's your personal choice. I guess it's up to you. The next one makes life a little bit more difficult. I have it where I have the x squared. I have the, it's not in standard form. So I can either put it in standard form and solve it by completing the square like I did up above, or I could just put in zeros here and do product sum. Well, since most of you don't seem to like product sum and factoring all that well, I'm going to choose to write these in standard form, just like I did in the previous examples, as though I was going to identify the center and the radius. So I'm going to put in standard form first, and then I'm going to solve for the x and the y-intercept. So here I go. I'm going to put my x's together, and I'm going to put my y's together. I'm going to put that 9 on the other side. I'm going to complete the square for the x's. So I'm going to have x, copy down that plus sign. 8 divided by 2, half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to the left side, add 16 to the right side. Completing the square for the y, I'm going to have plus y. This is a plus sign, so I'm going to copy down a plus sign. 2 divided by 2 is going to be 1. 1 squared is 1. So I'm going to add 1 there. And so when I do this, I'm going to have 17, 8. Now what I'm going to do is, I know my center would be negative 4, negative 1, but that's not what the question is asking me. The question is asking me what my x-intercept is and what my y-intercept is. So let's start with the x-intercept. So to find the x-intercept, I'm going to set y equal to 0. And so I'm going to have x plus 4 squared plus 0 plus 1 squared is equal to 8. So I'm going to have x plus 4 squared plus 1, because 1 squared is 1, is equal to 8. Subtract 1 from both sides, and I'm going to have x plus 4 is equal to 7. This is squared, so I'm going to take the square root of the left side, square root of the right side, so I'm going to have x plus 4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 7. So my y-intercepts are negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 7, and then my y-coordinate would be 0. Those are my x-intercepts when y is equal to 0. Now I'm going to do my y-intercept, and that's going to be when I set x equal to 0. So I'm going to have 0 plus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to 8. This will end up being, this will just be 4. 4 squared is 16, so I'm going to have 16 plus y plus 1 squared is equal to 8. Subtract 16 from both sides, and I'm going to have y plus 1 squared is equal to negative 8. So I'm going to take the square root, and I'm going to have y plus 1 is equal to, and then my calculator should say no real solution, something like that, which means this has no real solutions, which means I do not have, which means this is not possible. I'm not going to get a real number here, which means that I have, there is, oh, this is not writing very nicely, is no, oh my gosh, it's like 5-year-old. There is no y-intercept. And if you graph this on your calculator, you can go back up here and graph this in relations. We talked about graphing in relations. When you do this, you will see somewhere on this graph, while the center is at -4, -1, so -4, -1, something like this, or something like this. So it's going to be a circle that does something like this. It crosses the x-axis, but it never crosses the y-axis. So that's why when I go here, it's not going to be possible when you don't have a y-intercept. All right, well, I hope this helps, and I hope to see you soon.